6-minute podcast. Business, study, life.
Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive? We're tackling something pretty big today. Australia's proposed social media ban for under 16s. We've got research opinions from experts, even a look at what other countries are doing to see how they're handling this whole thing. It's a lot to unpack. But don't worry, by the end of this, you'll be totally up to speed on this issue. And trust me, there are some surprising arguments on both sides.
Yeah, it's not just about teens and TikTok, right? This is about a whole generation and a government's attempt to reshape their online world.
Exactly. So to set the stage, we're talking about the Australian government specifically. Communications Minister Michelle Rowland is leading the charge. They want to make it illegal for anyone under 16 to have accounts on all the major platforms, like TikTok, X, Facebook, Instagram, the whole shebang.
And they're not messing around. This legislation is already in motion, and they're aiming to implement it within a year. So things are definitely heating up.
Okay, so why is Australia even considering this? What's the driving force behind this whole thing?
Well, it boils down to concern about young people. They say it's about protecting them from harmful content, the potential for addiction, and, encouraging kids to be more active in the real world, have more face-to-face interactions.
It's funny you say that. I remember growing up, spending most of my time outside. Riding bikes, building forts. Social media wasn't even on the radar back then. But these days, it's everywhere. It's almost hard to imagine a childhood without it.
I know, right? And that's where this idea of a level playing field comes into play. The Australian government argues that if no one under 16 is on social media, no child will feel left out or disadvantaged. They're trying to level the digital playing field, so to speak.
That's an interesting thought. But isn't that a bit like saying, let's ban books so no child feels bad if they can't read? Shouldn't we focus on teaching kids how to use the online world safely and responsibly instead of just blocking them completely?
That's a valid point for sure. And there are definitely people who see it that way. This whole proposal has really sparked a lot of debate with strong arguments coming from both sides.
Okay, so let's break down those arguments. Let's start with the folks who actually support this ban. What are their reasons?
Well, even some of social media's biggest critics see this as a way to force a conversation about responsible tech use. It's like they're saying, hey, things have gotten out of control. We need to talk about this. Maybe this drastic measure will finally get everyone's attention.
So it's kind of like a wake-up call for the whole digital world.
Precisely. Some supporters also believe that this ban could actually push tech companies to finally create safer platforms. They point to Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, as a model. You see, Douyin has much stricter content moderation and usage limits for younger users. Kids under 14, for example, are limited to just 40 minutes of use per day, and the content they see is carefully curated to be age-appropriate. So the argument goes, if they can do it in China, why not here?
That's a good question. But is it really realistic to expect that level of control in a Western democracy? And what about the other side? What are the concerns of the people who oppose this ban?
I think enforceability is a big one. Kids are already pretty good at lying about their age to get on these platforms. Those age restrictions haven't really been working all that well, so...
Yeah, are we really expecting the same kids who are already sneaking onto these apps to suddenly be honest about how old they are? I'm not sure that's very realistic. What other concerns are people raising?
Well, some people worry that this ban could actually do more harm than good. Imagine kids turning 16 and suddenly they have access to this whole online world that they have zero experience with. They could be even more vulnerable to harmful content misinformation, those super realistic AI-generated images that are becoming harder and harder to spot.
So we're basically tossing them into the deep end without teaching them how to swim first.
Exactly. They won't have the skills to navigate all the complexities of the online world. And then there's the potential impact on certain communities. For them, a ban could be really isolating.
It's a good point. It reminds us that this isn't just about screen time. It's about access to information communities, a sense of belonging. Are there folks who argue that maybe this ban is just a way of avoiding the real problem? That instead of trying to restrict access, we should be focusing on making the platforms themselves safer? But going back to your point about safer platforms, how do we actually make that happen? What concrete steps could these companies take?
Well, first off, they could put more resources into better content moderation, especially for stuff that's aimed at younger users. They could develop smarter algorithms that can actually flag harmful content like cyberbullying, hate speech, graphic violence, that sort of thing.
What about those AI-generated images we talked about earlier? Is there any way to control that?
That's a tough one for sure because the technology is changing so rapidly. But maybe one solution could be to require all AI-generated images to be labeled. That way users, especially young ones, would know right away that what they're seeing isn't real.
So it's all about transparency and education, right? We need to teach kids to think critically about what they see online, to be able to spot fake images and videos, and to protect themselves from scams and predators.
Absolutely. Digital literacy is essential. It's like teaching kids how to swim before you let them loose in the pool.
Okay, so we've looked at the arguments for and against the ban, and we've explored some potential alternatives. But, we can't forget about the emotional side of this. I think any parent listening can relate to that feeling of anxiety when it comes to their kids and social media. It's that constant worry about what they're seeing, who they're talking to, how much time they're spending online. And let's face it, the way these platforms are designed, with all the likes and notifications, it's almost like they're built to be addictive.
You're so right. They tap into those really basic human needs for connection and validation. And for kids who are still figuring out who they are and how to navigate social situations, it can be incredibly hard to resist the pull of that online world.
It's kind of like giving a kid a bag of candy and saying, okay, just have one piece.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
For ourselves and for our kids, we have to give young people the tools to navigate the online world. Help them think critically.
It's kind of like giving them a map and a compass before you send them off on an adventure. We need to teach them how to figure out what information is good, what's fake, how to protect themselves, how to be good digital citizens.
And that education has to start early. It's
Yeah.
not enough to just give a kid a phone and hope for the best. We need to talk to them about this stuff from a young age. And, we have to set a good example ourselves.
Yeah, we're all kind of figuring this out as we go, right? I mean, the digital world is changing so fast. There are always new challenges popping up. But that's why these conversations are so important. We have to keep talking, keep learning, keep working together to make the online experience better for everyone, especially for young people.
Definitely. The digital world is here to stay. And so is the conversation about how we can shape it for the better.
So keep thinking about this, everyone. What solutions can you come up with? What steps can you take to make a difference in your own families and communities? This deep dive is just the start. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep the conversation going.
6-Minute Podcast.